By agreeing with the person criticizing you, you effectively disarm them, since they were probably bracing themselves for an argument. Now, Greek philosopher Epictetus advised against self-deprecation. He suggested that when you hear someone speaking poorly of you, instead of defending yourself, you should think, they don't know me well. There are many other faults they could have mentioned.
We are now joined by Paul du Toit in studio, a globally recognized business speaker, coach, and authority on persuasion, customer experience, and powerful representation. And that was an excerpt from the Book of Pursuasion, How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions While Building Trust. He has spoken to audiences across the world, helping people communicate with clarity, with confidence, and with impact. Tonight, we zoom into the most fascinating part of his work, where persuasion becomes less about convincing and more about human connection, emotional intelligence, and subtle behavioral cues. I felt like I was listening to an audiobook when you were reading. I actually wanted you to continue. I was like, what? Mr. Paul, some more. How are you doing?
I'm very, very well. I'm actually on top of the world.
Yes. You want to share with us why?
Well, I was just in Cape Town taking some photographs of my very pregnant daughter, who was expecting a baby on the 4th of April, and it came on the 13th of March, a few days after I got back home. So, of course, we were all on top of the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And she kept me waiting. But now I've got my grandchild.
Absolutely. Let's get into the book that brings us together. That is the Book of Persuasion, How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions. I still cannot get people to believe that trust can be built simultaneously while persuading people.
Oh, yeah,
There's still that tug of war. It's manipulative. People are supposed to have the right to make a decision and. And so maybe let's start there again. Just giving an overview of what persuasion is, how manipulation is part of persuasion, but not the entirety thereof, and how you can build trust.
Well, fundamentally, persuasion is positive, whereas manipulation is negative. So if you're going to be persuading, who's to say you shouldn't be allowed to use a technique? I mean, if you make a decision to use a technique, why should that be wrong? Why should that be insincere? So the fundamental basis of persuasion is to create respect and to treat people with respect. And that is a decision we make as a human being, just like you make a decision whether you're going to be happy or sad. Now, that little bit that I read earlier on was really about humor. And the point is, if someone's lighthearted and humorous, aren't you going to like them more than someone that's serious and dour the whole time? And then, quite frankly, who would you rather do business with or be persuaded by? Someone who's friendly or someone who's dour? So persuasion is effectively the positive side of changing people's minds, as opposed to forcing them to do something, which again is coercion, or in its subtler form, manipulation, but still both negative.
Sure. Let's talk about humor as a persuasive tool, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And you made an analogy there to say, who would you rather work with, somebody who's light or somebody who's heavy, gloomy, and the like. How do you use humor? Because I also think that humor is subjective to the person. So do we have things that we primarily all find funny?
Well, yeah. I mean, some people are just funny.
Yeah.
You can look at them and they're funny because they've got a dry sense of humor. I think the point really is that we prefer to deal with people that are pleasant and light-hearted. It is inbred in us to be suspicious of people we don't know.
Yeah.
So if you're being approached by someone that you don't know and they look friendly and there's warmth in their face, we are more likely to be drawn to them than if it's somebody looking stern and threatening. So immediately our body language, the way we approach people, and the warmth in our voice has got a lot to do with our ability to be able to persuade people. Now, humor, there's a saying that if people are laughing, they're listening.
Because they found a reason to laugh.
Yes, because something kind of tickled them.
Yeah.
So it's almost an unfair way to get them on your side, but it works nicely. Now the point is, if you're communicating with somebody and you're just automatically funny, well, that's great, but most of us aren't. So the point is, you see, now you're laughing. That was just a spontaneous thing that I said.
That's sad.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
most of us, we don't regard ourselves as being comedians. But if we're in a happy frame of mind, funny stuff just happens like it did now. I mean, that was totally spontaneous.
That is fair. So when we talk about the warmth in our voice,
Yeah.
it's because of our state of mind.
Well, very much so, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about, and I want to get to people understanding the power of laughter, how it affects someone's ease around you. I
Yeah.
think that when you say make people laugh, you can overdo it and then people get uncomfortable.
Well, it's got to be laced in sincerity and authenticity. You can't really force humor. And this is one of the things that we have to teach speakers.
Yeah.
Is if you're trying to connect with the audience, there are really only two tools you've got. The one is humor and the other one is involvement.
Yeah.
Now, the most dangerous one is humor, because if you try some humor, like a set piece joke, and it backfires, well, then you kind of on the back foot. Then you're running the comrades uprun. So you see, I didn't plan that, but it was just humorous.
Yeah.
So then you'd probably opt for involvement as being a safer option, and you can do stuff that's really quite inane. But the moment people are involved, they tend to be drawn closer towards you than if they see you're attempting to impress them. So humor is something that really can happen automatically if you're in a light-hearted frame of mind.
Yeah.
But just warmth and friendliness can be incredibly persuasive. Now, in the book, I talk about an Australian man called Don Ritchie, and he lived at a overhang called the Gap in Australia, which was famous for people going there to commit suicide. And he would start watching out for people that were standing there. And when they did, he used to walk up to them and he'd just say, "What are you doing here?" And he'd say, "Why don't you come to my house and have a cup of tea and talk to me, talk about it?" He's credited with saving between 160 and 180 lives just by being friendly and kind.
Yeah.
And he eventually got the Order of Australia. He got awarded the Order of Australia. Now, he's passed away many years ago, but he lived to a ripe old age, and in his retirement spent most of his time saving people's lives just through being wonderful.
And being present.
So how cool is that? How persuasive is that?
That's beautiful.
You save people's lives.
That's one of the ultimate forms of the best use of persuasion.
Well, absolutely. But so is your smile.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you smile at people, you draw them towards you. It's just as simple as that.
I want to talk about using laughter and smile to deliver bad news.
Yeah, well, I think one has to be a little bit careful there.
Yeah.
And one of the things we need to understand is that people can hear our facial expression through the phone. So if you're the bank manager and you're phoning somebody to tell them that you're going to be calling in their overdraft, you can't be doing that with a smile on your face, because they're going to hear it. I mean, now you're laughing because it's funny, because it's not funny if you're on the other end of the line and that's happening.
Yeah.
So again, friendliness and warmth, and that has its place, but sometimes you do need to be serious about something.
Yeah.
There is another obvious application of humor that is quite interesting. If you're at a funeral and the person whom you're doing the eulogy for was a very light-hearted person that loved telling jokes and what have you,
Yeah.
you can get away with having a very funny eulogy, because everyone would have known the person to have been funny and humorous and light-hearted, and he would have expected his eulogy to be light-hearted.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the right eulogy for that person would be, "I don't want you to all sit here with a long face. Laugh with me. Let's laugh about this guy's life, because that's what he was about." So it can be appropriate to kind of switch it around in a situation that you expect to be serious.
That is the voice there of Paul du Toit, who is a renowned speaker, coach, and authority on persuasion. And that's what brings us to this very book, the Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and influence their decision making, or rather their decisions, while building trust. If you have questions, find us on WhatsApp +278 288 6684. Let's talk about authenticity and strategy. Okay, so maybe Sheila's not that funny, so we need a bit of a strategy. But at the same time, I want to bring in a sense of realness, something relatable, something tangible for you to know that this is Sheila, not a prompt speaking to you. How do you balance the two?
Well, I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
There's no real technique in balancing the two. It's really just being yourself. And I think that when we're impressed by somebody else, we often try and copy. Now, people are natural mimics. And in this part of the book, I speak about mirroring.
Yes.
And also about generally, setting an example. But I think it's very important that you can take things that other people do that are impressive, and you can maybe try and emulate them, but in the context of being yourself. Because if you're delivering a presentation, or you're doing a eulogy, or you're doing a speech and what have you, people have not come to listen to you being somebody else. They've actually come to listen to you being authentically you.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get rid of this thing about, oh, everyone else is better than me, I'm just little me. All of us are amazingly unique.
Yeah.
And when we're speaking to other people, we should do our best to be authentically ourselves, even though we may pick up tips from other sources. And that's really what it's about.
Sure.
People can feel if you're not being real. We have that. We start learning that as a baby. There are certain parts of our senses that are already fully developed when we're born. We can smell our mom.
Yes.
Within the first day. We can hear just about fully as we're born. It's only the sight that kicks in at about 7 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So the eyes are slowly focusing, but even then, after a few years, we pick up things like if a person is angry or sad or bored or what have you, we know how to pick up those things without the face being completely distorted. So we are amazingly we just have this ability. We're intuitive. We can pick up how people are feeling.
Sure. Paul, you have trained a number of people. What are some thousands of people? Yeah. Let's be correct. Come correct there, Sheila. What are some of the faults in communication that you have seen people use when it comes to humor and modeling authenticity and sort of juggling this space where I want to be myself, but I realize that I don't necessarily think I'm, the best form of me right now? What are some of the things that you've noticed?
To me, it goes down to one fundamental issue.
Yeah.
And that is self-belief.
Okay.
And if we can realize that we are enough, if I can realize that I am enough and that I don't have to be somebody else, if I can realize that within me I have the power to communicate what I want to other people, to persuade them if necessary, to sometimes empathize with them, and to use certain skills like first agreeing with them before putting our point of view to put them at ease. Those kinds of things, in other words, learning skills, in other words, not just thinking that, well, I can't persuade because somebody said no. Somebody saying no does not necessarily mean that you can't persuade them to your point of view. It just means that you need to use some technique. And you sometimes need to use a bit of patience. Because if you're just going to push back, what are they going to do? They're going to push you back. Yeah. So ultimately, a little bit of self-belief and a bit of technique, a bit of patience, a bit of understanding that due to the fact that people do use shortcuts, heuristics, as we spoke about in the initial interview, people's minds can be changed if we just use a little bit of skill. Yeah.
We're going to learn more about that skill in just a short bit. If you've just joined us, it is 22 minutes before midnight in Central Africa time. Paul du Toit joins us in studio, the author behind the Book of Persuasion, How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions While Building Trust. Send through your questions. Find us on WhatsApp, +27 83 288 6684. A quick breather for now.
From Cape to Cairo, every beat tells a story. It's African Diaries on Channel Africa.
20 minutes before midnight in Central Africa time. Thank you so much for choosing us over the rest. This is African Diaries. We're still in conversation with Mr. Paul du Toit, who is the author of the Book of Persuasion, How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions While Building Trust. I want us to talk about mirroring versus modeling, right? I think we, to an extent, spoke about modeling behavior, and this is what the child being born and sort of having nuances, picking up nuances from the mother. Let's talk about mirror. What is mirroring first?
Okay, so let me first just talk a bit about modeling, because that then kind of flows into mirroring.
Yes.
So let's say a child grows up in a home where, let's say, one of the parents is swearing all the time. What do you think this child is going to be doing by the time they're 2.5?
We've seen it.
They're going to be swearing all the time.
Yeah.
Because they are going to mimic and they're going to copy the behavior of the parent.
Yeah.
So if effectively what's happening is the child, by being a mimic, and all children are natural mimics, that's how they learn. They wouldn't be able to learn to talk if they couldn't mimic. They're mimicking the words being said by their parents. And if they're hearing swearing most of the time, they will learn to swear. So we learn to mirror. That is how we learn. Now, an example that I use in the book was, I was pretty close to my stepmom, and I hadn't seen her for some time, and she came to visit me, and we sat opposite one another at the table, and we got into a conversation. And if someone had taken a picture, you would have seen that we both had our elbows leaning on the table, with our hands up. We were looking at the same angle at one another. Our eyes were locked. If you took a picture, you would see two people with exactly the same body position. What we were effectively doing was we were mirroring one another. So modeling would be something that a leader does to model certain behavior. A great example would have been the head of Disney many years ago was walking through Disneyland, which they always try and keep really neat and tidy. There were all these cleaners all over the place. There was a crisp packet lying there. And of course the two cleaners saw it was the boss, and they froze. And all he did was, the boss walked up, took the crisp packet. He was in a suit, and he picked it up with his hands and he put it in his pocket and just walked on. Now what he was mirroring was leadership. Without admonishing the cleaners or anything. That's an example of modeling what you want to see without having to cause a fuss. Now, he could have admonished those people, but he didn't. He showed leadership. That was modeling. So mirroring is our ability to be able to copy, or to basically to copy them. And it's a powerful persuasive technique that can be used at the right time.
Perhaps let's bring in an example.
Okay, so I can't actually think of one right now. I think the point, quite simply, with modeling is we tend to copy behaviors that we feel are desirable. And it's essentially how we learn certain skills. So we learn those skills using our senses. Our ability to model is based on our ability to be able to mimic. And I think modeling can be used to persuade if we do something that people think might be acceptable or desirable. So in other words, habits or rituals that people have, if we learn to mimic those in the right particular way, or model them, we're often able to use those to persuade.
I think the reason why I'm asking is I'm thinking, smack in the heart of you trying to persuade someone. Could you model and they admire that, and because of that admiration, they come into agreement with you?
Well, modeling is very often setting an example of
Yes.
the way to behave.
Yeah.
So people are going to see how you behave, and they're going to think to themselves, well, this person is actually setting a good example. Whereas people that model the wrong behavior, they often tend to repel people.
Yeah.
So I think that's how it works.
Let's talk about the power of words.
Okay, so words are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
When we're a child, we get told, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never harm you. Bad advice. Because words are incredibly harmful. In fact, most bullying that happens doesn't happen with fists, it happens with words, particularly with social media today.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that firstly, words can be very damaging, and secondly, words can be very powerful. And any word with a positive connotation to it can be used as a persuasive tool to change people's minds.
Yeah.
So for instance, a word like save, that's a positive word. Everyone wants to save. So stores now use the word save. Well, come into our shop and save. Actually, they're buying, they're not saving.
Yep.
But it means you're going to spend less if you buy here than if you bought somewhere else. A word like guarantee is very, very powerful. But the most powerful words are words like you and, of course, your own name. So the moment I say the word Sheila,
Yeah.
that's very important to you because it's your name.
Yeah.
So we can be sitting at an airport, we hear our name coming over the intercom, and suddenly it gets our attention because it's our name. And all right, even if you're called John Smith, there might be a lot of people that have got your name, but when it's said over the loudspeaker at the airport, you're probably the only John Smith there at the particular time.
Yeah.
So it gets your attention. So one of the techniques of persuasion, let's say you get this cold call coming through, and the person says, hello, I'd like to speak to Sheila Ndikumana, please. Say, this is her? Is that Sheila? Yes, this is Sheila. Is that Sheila Ndikumana? Yes, that's right. Oh, Sheila, now I've said your name 4 times in 15 seconds. Quite hard for you to put the phone down in my ear.
That is fair. Might be a little irritable, but it would be hard.
Yes, but it's hard because I'm actually saying your name. I'm doing something very personal. I'm not just saying sir or madam or something. I'm using your name.
Yeah.
Now, that's an example of a very powerful way of getting somebody to not put down the phone. But let's just take an example of someone's talking to you and they stop and they say to you, I'd like you to just imagine it's Christmas Day. Your whole family is gathered around the table together.
Yeah.
And mom walks in with this lovely roast and she just puts it on the table. Now, I've just transported you to Christmas Day at home. You weren't there 10 seconds ago, but I've used the word imagine to transport you. Now, that is one of the most powerful words you can possibly use in the English language. It's the word imagine. So I'm just using those few words to indicate to you how powerful words really are. So if you're going for an interview, you might want to think about one or two or three things that you're going to say to make sure that the interview goes in your direction. In other words, some of the power words that you're going to use in that interview. If you're delivering a speech, you want to start off with a very strong opening line. So you might use some power words in the opening line. You might also want to end strongly. So you make sure that you use powerful words at the end of your speech in order to drive your message home and to get people to do what it is that you want them to do. So words are incredibly powerful.
Yes, they are.
Now, there is a technique where you can, let's say somebody's complaining about something. And let's just use the example that last year I sold them a ton of fertilizer and I promised them it's going to increase the yield of your crops. And now you go back to the farm and you want to sell him 2 tons of fertilizer, but he says, hang on a moment. He says, your fertilizer is rubbish, man. He says, I put it on my crops and my yield went down.
Sure.
So now you have to use words to turn this guy around. So how about this technique? You agree with him, you switch, you say because, and then you say imagine. So let's try that. So you say, I agree with you that your yield on your crops was not as good as you expected.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just agreed. But now I'm going to switch. And I say, however, the surrounding farmers had an increase in yield of 40% last year because their farm did not experience the micro weather conditions that your crops experienced. Imagine if you'd had the same conditions on your farm and you'd also had a 40% increase in. So now I've used the technique of agree, switch, because, and imagine.
Sure.
Now the word because is amazingly powerful.
Yeah.
So long as you're able to pin in the word because, it doesn't matter how strong or how weak the reason is, you're likely to get your way. So if you want to get in front of the queue to quickly make a few copies, and they've done this experiment, it's the famous Xerox experiment, and you say, because I'm in a real hurry, they're probably going to let you in. But if you had to say, because the Dalai Lama will bless you, they'll also let you in. You know, there's very little difference, and the statistics show it. I give evidence in the book.
Wow.
So words are powerful.
The voice there of Paul du Toit convincing us, in actual fact, persuading us of the power of words, joining us in studio. Quick breather, then we wrap up conversations.
Big conversations about Africa's climate future are coming to Johannesburg.
Africa's future is on the agenda. Don't miss your place in the conversation.
Channel Africa, in partnership with Wits Business School, presents Africa Matters. Climate change. Financing Africa's recovery on the 25th of March. Join us live.
We are excited to be broadcasting live this Wednesday at the Africa Matters Summit.
Do join us there. It's going to be a very wonderful gathering of Africans.
Broadcasting directly from Wits Business School. Real conversations. Real solutions.
So join the conversation.
Africa Matters.
Be part of the conversation.
Only on Channel Africa. Africa Matters. The conversation on climate change and financing Africa's recovery. Only on Channel Africa.
We're proud to announce that Wits Business School is actually our partner. They are hosting us. The second most important thing, though, for me, is that we often go to these summits, these conferences, and you find that you never really know where to find solutions and outcomes that came out of those discussions. So Wits Business School will craft our outcomes document, which will have steps to say what are the follow-ups and how do we measure success and what do we need to do next.
Across the continent, climate change is forcing tough decisions. This is Africa Matters. Your passport to Africa's untold stories. Only on African Diaries. Weekdays, 10 till midnight.
It is 7 minutes before midnight in Central Africa time. Still speaking to Paul du Toit, the author of the Book of Pursuasion, how you can change people's minds and influence their decisions while building trust. Paul, we are time pressed, so we're going to look at presentation, how information is presented.
Okay, so we were talking about words earlier on.
Yes.
So just imagine that I was a doctor and I was recommending a particular treatment.
Okay.
And I said, there's pretty much a 65% chance that this treatment is going to work. Are you likely then to give it a go based on 65%? And I'd say probably yes, because that's a good chance. But if I had to say to you that there's a 35% chance that this treatment will fail, you're less likely to give it a chance because I've just said a negative. But that was exactly the same information. It was just presented differently.
Yeah.
So the point with persuasion is think about how you are presenting information. It's as simple as that.
That took me a minute to register. It's the same set of stats.
This is a typical example of how just by using a simple technique, you can change somebody's mind. Or you can change the trajectory of how they make a decision.
Let's talk about asking for, or rather, asking the right questions.
Okay, so very simply, there are closed questions and there are open questions.
Yeah.
Open questions are designed to get information. Closed questions are designed to check information. But how do you know if you're asking an open question or a closed question? So the open questions, which are the key to getting information, are used 95% of the time if you use the H6Ws, which is how, what, when, why, which, where, and who. If you use any of those words in the question, it becomes an open question.
Okay.
Almost 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And then if you have things like do you, have you, will you, does it, those are closed questions. So they're used to check information.
Yeah.
So it's just a question really of being aware of how you are asking questions so that you get the kind of answers you're looking for. If you don't want to just get a yes, no, or maybe, if you want to get more information, use the H6Ws.
Paul, for those who have heard you and they're saying, I am persuaded that I need this book, where do they find it?
Well, if you go to presentationskills.co.za /shop, you will find the book there. If you're outside of South Africa and you want to pick it up on Amazon, just go to amazon.com, you put in the Book of Persuasion, but you might also want to just put in Paul, because there's quite a lot of books on persuasion out there, and that'll probably pull up my book. And it's the one with the lady on the cover.
And then lastly, are you going to be speaking anywhere for those who are saying, I want to see the man in action?
Well, I am available for companies to book me to come and talk to them about persuasion. My talk is called The Keys to Persuasion. And it's not only for sales teams, as people seem to think. It's also for management. And it's for people in organizations that want to learn how to communicate better and have a more persuasive way of getting their point across. So persuasion is really, it's about influence, and it's for anyone.
It is really for anyone. I'm realizing that it's for me right here in front of you who's listening and watching. Paul, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You're most welcome, Sheila.
The voice there of Paul du Toit, the author of the Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and build influence, or rather, and influence their decisions while building trust. Listen, at this point, I'm muggling all the words together.